You spend 5 years building a life with someone. 5 years of mornings together, dinners shared, promises whispered in the dark. You believe in forever. You believe in him. And then, in a single moment, surrounded by the people you love most, your entire world shatters into 1,000 pieces you don't know how to put back together. Real life-inspired emotional stories from USA, Canada, UAE, and Europe, filled with truth, betrayal, love, and redemption. Each story touches the soul and reveals what really happens behind closed doors. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing to Grandma True Stories. It helps more people become aware of the reality of heartbreak and betrayal. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 58 years old, and I teach high school art in a quiet suburb just outside of Boston. I've been divorced for 12 years. My ex-husband left me for a younger woman, which is such a cliché, I know. It broke me at the time. I thought that was it for me, that my chance at happiness had passed. But then David came into my life, and everything changed. I met him at a gallery opening. My daughter Sarah had invited me to come along. She was always trying to get me out of the house, worried that I was becoming a hermit. I almost didn't go that night. I remember standing in front of my closet, thinking about how exhausting it would be to make small talk with strangers. But Sarah had driven all the way to pick me up, and I didn't want to disappoint her. So I put on a nice blue dress, fixed my hair, and went. David was standing near one of the paintings, a seascape, all blues and grays. He was tall, with silver hair and kind eyes. When he turned and smiled at me, I felt something I thought I'd never feel again. Butterflies. At 53 years old, I was getting butterflies like a teenager. We talked for hours that night. He was a retired engineer, recently moved to the area, recently divorced himself. He understood the sting of being left behind, free of starting over when you thought your best years were behind you. We exchanged phone numbers with nervous excitement, like we were both taking a risk that might not pay off. He called me 3 days later. We had coffee, then dinner, then everything. Over the next 5 years, David became my world. We traveled together, took a trip to Italy, another to Maine. We cooked elaborate dinners in his kitchen on Sunday nights. He met my children, and they seemed to approve. My ex-husband had been emotionally unavailable, often absent, always resentful. David was the opposite. He was present. He listened. He remembered the small things I told him, that I loved chamomile tea, that my favorite flower was the peony, that I was scared of storms. He told me he loved me regularly. He said things like, "You're my second chance at happiness, Maggie," and "I want to grow old with you." And my personal favorite, said during a quiet moment on the porch one summer evening, "I've never felt this way about anyone. I want forever with you." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. My daughter Sarah is 32, smart and intuitive. She works in marketing and has always been the planner in our family. About a month before my 59th birthday, she called me with excitement in her voice. "Mom, I want to throw you a party," she said. "A real party. You've been so happy these past few years, and I want to celebrate that. I want to celebrate you." I protested, as mothers do. I told her it was too much trouble, that I didn't need anything, that my birthday wasn't that important. But Sarah was insistent, and honestly, I was touched. For so many years after my divorce, I felt invisible. Getting older as a single woman in a world that didn't seem to value single women my age, it was lonely. The idea that my daughter wanted to mark this milestone, that she wanted the people I loved to gather and celebrate me, it meant everything. "Don't tell David," Sarah warned. "This is a surprise. I want it to be real." I promised I wouldn't tell him. David and I had talked about my birthday casually. He mentioned taking me to dinner, maybe somewhere nice. I didn't tell him about Sarah's plans. Of course. The secret made me feel like a conspirator with my daughter, like we were two women sharing something special, something that belonged just to us. It made me feel young again, in a way. I should have noticed things. I think looking back now there were signs. Small ones at first. David had become a bit more distant in recent months. He'd check his phone frequently, sometimes stepping away to take calls. Once, I saw a text notification flash across his screen from someone named R. But when I glanced at him questioningly, he quickly dismissed it as a work matter, even though he'd been retired for 3 years. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that trust was essential in a relationship, that my ex-husband's infidelity had made me suspicious of all men, and that I couldn't let my past poison my present. So when David started spending more time at the gym, or out with his golf buddies, I didn't question it. When he seemed a bit distracted during dinner, looking past me rather than at me, I didn't make a big deal of it. I was so busy being grateful for having a second chance at love that I didn't see the cracks forming. My best friend Tom saw them, though. Tom and I have known each other since college. He was a groomsman at my wedding to my ex-husband, and he was there with a shoulder to cry on during my divorce. He's a good man, one of the few genuinely good men I know. He also isn't one to sugarcoat things. Something's off with David, he said to me one afternoon. We were sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee. It was about 2 weeks before my birthday. What do you mean? I asked, though I knew exactly what he meant. I just didn't want to hear it. He seems different, distracted. When we ran into him at the grocery store last week, he seemed almost nervous to see me. Like he was hiding something. I defended David. I told Tom he was imagining things, that maybe David was just stressed about some project, or that he had been working too hard on his golf game. Anything but the truth I was starting to suspect, but refused to acknowledge. Tom looked at me with sadness in his eyes. Maggie, I just don't want to see you hurt again. Be careful, okay? I hugged him and told him not to worry. I told him I was happy, that I was finally in a good place, and that everything was going to be fine. I was so wrong. The morning of my birthday arrived. It was a Wednesday. David had planned for us to go out to dinner that evening. His treat, he said. He seemed a bit off all day, a little quiet, but I attributed it to him trying to keep the surprise going. I thought maybe Sarah had told him about the party, and he was trying to act natural. I came home from school around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My house was quiet. I made myself tea, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat down with a book I'd been meaning to finish. I wasn't expecting anything extraordinary. Birthdays, at my age, are less about excitement and more about gratitude for another year of good health, for being alive, for having people who care about you. Around 5 o'clock, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Mom? Can you come to the rec center on Maple Street at 60:30? I have a surprise for you. Tell David you're meeting me for something and I'll explain when you get there. My heart started racing. The party. It was really happening. I texted back. Okay, should I dress up? Yes. Nice casual. You'll want to look good for pictures. I freshened up, changed into a nicer blouse and pants, and put on some jewelry. I felt a flutter of excitement in my chest. As vain as it might sound, I was looking forward to this. I was looking forward to being celebrated, to having a night that was about me. When David came home around 6, I was ready to go. Where are you heading? He asked. Sarah wants to meet me for something, I said, keeping it vague as instructed. She didn't tell me what. You know how she is, always planning something mysterious. David nodded, but I noticed something cross his face. Guilt, relief. I wasn't sure. Have fun, he said. I'll just stay in tonight. I kissed him goodbye and headed out. The rec center parking lot was already full when I arrived. Through the glass doors, I could see balloons and streamers. My chest swelled with emotion. Sarah had really done it. My friends were in there, people I hadn't seen in months, people who cared enough about me to show up on a Wednesday night. I took a deep breath, straightened my blouse, and walked toward the door. I had no idea it was the last moment of peace I would experience for a very long time. The party was beautiful. That's what I kept thinking even as my world was collapsing around me. At least it was beautiful. Sarah had decorated the rec center's community room with elegance and care. Soft gold and silver streamers hung from the ceiling. Centerpieces of peonies, my favorite flowers, sat on round tables, and there was a photo display showing pictures of me throughout the years. Me as a young bride, me holding my newborn children, me at my college graduation, me at art gallery openings, me laughing with friends. A chronicle of a life well lived, I had thought. When I walked in, everyone shouted, surprise, and I felt tears prick my eyes. There was my daughter, beaming with pride at what she'd orchestrated. There were my colleagues from school, my neighbors, my book club friends. Tom was there, standing near the refreshment table with a knowing smile. These were my people. These were the ones who loved me. Sarah rushed over and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. Happy birthday, Mom, she whispered in my ear. You deserve this. I hugged her back, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude and love. Thank you, I said. This is wonderful. You're wonderful. For the first hour it was perfect. I moved through the room, greeting people, accepting hugs and well wishes. Someone had made a beautiful cake, vanilla with raspberry filling, my favorite. There were speeches. Tom gave a sweet toast about our friendship spanning decades. Sarah talked about what it meant to watch her mother come alive again after so many years of pain. There were laughs and tears and that warm feeling you get when you know you're truly loved. I was genuinely happy. Around 7:30, I was standing by the photo display with a small group of friends, laughing about an old picture of me from the 80s when I had an absolutely terrible perm. When I noticed Sarah's face change, she was looking at something behind me, and the joy drained from her expression entirely. I turned around to see what she was looking at. Rebecca was standing in the doorway of the rec center. Rebecca is my cousin on my mother's side. She's 34 years old, beautiful in that effortless way that some people are beautiful. Long dark hair, a slim figure, the kind of face that makes you understand why people become models. For years we had been close. When she was younger, I babysat her. When she was in high school, she came to me with her problems. When she had her heart broken by her first boyfriend, I was the one who held her and told her it would be okay. I loved Rebecca. But for the past year or so, our relationship had become strained. She rarely called. She seemed distant when we did see each other. My mother had mentioned that Rebecca had been seeing someone seriously, but Rebecca hadn't told me about it. That had stung a little, but I'd told myself I was being oversensitive, that as people got older and busier, relationships naturally drifted. I smiled at her, genuinely happy to see her. "Rebecca! I didn't know you were coming." She looked shocked to see me. Genuinely shocked. Her face went pale. Sarah didn't tell me. She started, then she looked toward the door, clearly looking for a way out. That's when David walked in. I didn't process it at first. My brain couldn't seem to make sense of what my eyes were seeing. David was supposed to be home, staying in for the evening. Instead, he was walking through the door of my birthday party, a party that was supposed to be a surprise, which meant he had somehow known about it and chose to come anyway, which meant Sarah had either told him or. He saw Rebecca, and his face crumpled with something between panic and resignation. The room seemed to get very quiet. I don't know if that was actually true or if it was just my perception narrowing, my hearing becoming muffled as adrenaline flooded my system. "Rebecca," David said, his voice strained. "You shouldn't be here?" "I know," Rebecca said quietly. "I didn't know this was—" She glanced at me, and in that glance I saw everything. I saw the guilt. I saw the secret. I saw something between them that had no business existing. "What's going on?" I asked. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, high and thin, like it was coming from very far away. David looked at me and the color drained from his face entirely. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Maggie, he started. "Why is she here?" I asked. "Why are you here? This is supposed to be a surprise party. You said you were staying home?" "I can explain," David said. He didn't know. Rebecca interjected. "I mean, Sarah called me because I'm your cousin, and I didn't know David would be here." Tom appeared at my elbow. I hadn't seen him approach, but he was suddenly there, his presence a quiet anchor in the chaos that was beginning. "Maggie," he said softly. Then he looked at David. "There's something you need to know." "What?" I said. "What? What is it?" David's shoulders slumped. He looked defeated, hollowed out. He looked like a man who had been caught doing something unforgivable and was about to have to confess. "I found something," Tom said. He was looking at David when he said it. 2 weeks ago, I was at your house, remember? You asked me to bring over some tools. I needed to use your car to get something from the garage. Your car door was open. On the front seat, there was a receipt. From a jewelry store. My stomach dropped. "I saw it," Tom continued. "I didn't mean to pry, but I saw it. You'd purchased an engagement ring. Not a regular engagement ring, a specific one, with a unique setting. It was dated 3 months ago. The room was fully quiet now. Everyone had stopped talking. Everyone was looking. Then I saw something else," Tom said. "On the passenger seat, there was a wedding venue booking confirmation for a wedding planned for next June. I couldn't see all the details, but I could see it was addressed to David Richardson and Rebecca Chen." My ears started ringing. I looked at David, I looked at Rebecca. I looked back at David. "No," I said. It was the only word I could form. "Maggie." David started toward me. "No," I said again. "No, that's not. You wouldn't." "I'm so sorry," David said, and he reached out toward me. I stepped backward, bumping into Tom, who steadied me with a hand on my back. "How long?" I asked. My voice had become very small. "How long what?" David asked quietly. "How long have you been with her? How long have you been lying to me?" David ran his hand through his hair. A gesture I'd seen him do 1,000 times before, but now it looked like the gesture of a stranger. 8 months, he said. We met at a charity gala. It just happened. It just happened, I repeated flatly. You met my cousin at a charity gala, fell in love with her, got engaged to her, got engaged to her? David, and it just happened. I wanted to tell you, he said. I've wanted to tell you so many times, but I didn't know how. I didn't know how to end what we had in a way that would make sense. I felt laughter bubbling up in my chest. It was the wrong kind of laughter, the kind that comes when your mind is trying to process something it cannot accept. We had something real, I said. Or so I thought. We had 5 years, David. 5 years of mornings and dinners and promises. You told me you wanted forever with me. You said I was your second chance at happiness. I meant it, he said desperately. I did mean it, Maggie. I didn't understand what would happen when I met Rebecca. I didn't expect to feel. What? I interrupted. What didn't you expect to feel? Did you expect to feel young? Because that's what she is, isn't it? She's 34, and you're 62, and somewhere along the way, you decided that what you had with me wasn't quite good enough. That I wasn't quite young enough, quite pretty enough, quite enough. That's not fair, David said. Not fair, I said. The anger was rising now, burning through the shock. You don't get to talk to me about fair. You lied to me every single day. Every morning when I woke up beside you, you lied. Every night when you said you loved me, you lied. You turned my favorite cousin into a conspirator in your deception. And you did it all while promising me forever. Rebecca was crying. Actually crying, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. Maggie, she said. I'm so sorry. I told him not to. I told him to tell you, but he said he would, and then he didn't, and I didn't know what to do. Don't, I said to her, holding up my hand. Don't apologize to me, don't explain. Just, don't. I looked around the room. Everyone was staring. My friends, my colleagues. The people I'd invited into my happiness were now witnessing my destruction. I'm sorry, I said to Sarah. I'm sorry you went to all this trouble. Mom, I didn't know, she started, looking stricken. I know, I said. It's not your fault. I turned back to David. I want you to leave. I want you to take your lies and your ring and your second chances and get out of here. Maggie, please, he said. Can we talk about this? Can we at least go somewhere and talk? No, I said. There's nothing to talk about. It's over. We're over. And I want you gone from my life. All of you. I looked at Rebecca when I said the last part. She flinched as if I'd struck her. And then I did something I hadn't done in decades. I began to cry, not quietly, not with dignity. I cried hard, the kind of crying that comes from deep in your body, that shakes you from the inside out. I cried for the future I'd thought I had. I cried for the trust I'd given so freely. I cried for the fool I'd been. Sarah was there immediately, her arm around me, ushering me away from the crowd. Tom followed, shooting David a look that could have killed a man. As Sarah led me toward the back offices of the rec center, I heard David call my name one more time. I didn't turn around. The office they took me to was small and windowless. It had a desk, some filing cabinets, and a faded motivational poster that said, "Believe in yourself," with a picture of a sunset. I stared at that poster for a long time, wondering if the person who'd hung it there actually believed in themselves, or if it was just something meant to inspire the office staff. Sarah sat beside me, holding my hand. Tom stood by the door, his solid presence a barrier between me and the chaos outside. I can't believe this, I kept saying. I can't believe this is happening. I know, Sarah said softly. I know. Mom, did you know? I asked suddenly. Did you know about any of this? No, Mom, no. I swear to you, I had no idea. When Tom texted me about what he found, I was as shocked as you were. That's why I wanted to tell you privately before the party, but I didn't have time and I thought. She broke off, her own eyes filling with tears. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't handle this better. It's not your fault, I said automatically, but part of me was angry at her too. Part of me was angry at everyone. You couldn't have known. But I was thinking, how did no one know? How did I not know? How did I spend 5 years with a man who was lying to me every single day? After about 30 minutes, Sarah went out to manage the guests who were still at the party. She told people I wasn't feeling well, which was technically true. Tom stayed with me. I should have told you sooner, Tom said quietly. When I first found that receipt, I should have come to you immediately instead of sitting on it, trying to figure out how to bring it up. You did the right thing, I said. You gave me the truth when you knew it. That's more than David did? Do you want to talk about it? Tom asked. I don't even know where to start, I said. 8 months, 8 months, Tom. That's half a year of deliberate deception. How many times did we go to dinner? And I looked across the table at him and told him I loved him, and he was sitting there knowing he was betraying me. How many times did he touch me, tell me he loved me, plan our future, all while planning to marry my cousin? The anger was building again, a hot, churning thing in my stomach. And Rebecca, I said. I loved her. I took her in when her parents were fighting. I listened to her problems. I helped her through her first heartbreak, and she repaid that by… I couldn't even finish the sentence. People do stupid things, Tom said. Doesn't excuse what they did, but… I don't want to excuse them, I interrupted. I don't want to understand them. I don't want to hear about how things just happened. Things don't just happen. Things happen because you make choices. Every single day, David chose to lie to me. Every single day, Rebecca chose to keep the secret. Tom was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You have every right to be angry. You should be angry. But don't let this anger become the thing that defines the rest of your life." How am I supposed to move past this? I asked. How am I supposed to trust anyone ever again? I don't know, Tom admitted. But I know you. I know you're strong. And I know that eventually, you'll figure it out. I wasn't sure I believed him. When I finally left the rec center that night, it was close to 9 o'clock. Sarah drove me home in silence. When we pulled into my driveway, I saw David's car was gone. "Do you want me to stay?" Sarah asked. I shook my head. "No, I need to be alone." She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She kissed my forehead and told me to call her if I needed anything. I walked into my house, the house where David had spent so much of his time, where he kept clothes in the bedroom closet, where he made breakfast on Sunday mornings, and the emptiness of it hit me like a physical blow. I went into the bedroom and opened his closet. His clothes were still there, his shoes, his winter coat. The evidence of a life we had shared, still hanging as if nothing had changed. I reached out and touched one of his shirts, a blue button-down I had given him for Christmas 2 years ago, and I let out a sound that I barely recognized as my own voice. It was a sob, raw and primal. I pulled the shirt off the hanger and threw it on the floor. Then another. Then another. I pulled his clothes from the closet and threw them on the bed, on the floor, creating a chaos of fabric and threads and the physical manifestation of my rage. When I was done, I sat on the edge of the bed, surrounded by his things, and I cried. I cried for the years I had wasted. I cried for the dreams I had allowed myself to have. I cried for the foolish, hopeful woman I had been just hours before, walking into her surprise birthday party. Believing in love and forever and second chances, I cried until there were no tears left. The next morning, I woke up on top of my bed, still fully clothed, with David's clothes still scattered around me. For a moment before full consciousness came, I thought maybe it had all been a terrible dream. Then I remembered, and the weight settled on my chest again. My phone had 14 missed calls and dozens of text messages. Most were from David, some were from Rebecca. A few were from meaning friends who had witnessed the spectacle at the party. I didn't read any of them. I did call my ex-husband, which was something I never thought I'd do. We had been divorced for 12 years and had maintained a cordial but distant relationship. But he had known me for 30 years. He had known me as a young woman, before David, before all of this. "Maggie," he answered on the second ring, surprise evident in his voice. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "No, everything is not okay." I told him what had happened. I told him about David and Rebecca. I told him about the engagement ring and the wedding venue. I told him about the ambush at my birthday party. To his credit, he listened without interrupting. When I was done, he said, "I'm sorry. That's a terrible thing to go through. I should have learned my lesson with you," I said bitterly. "I should have known better than to trust a man. That's not fair to yourself," he said. "What I did to you was wrong. What David did is wrong. But that doesn't mean all men are untrustworthy. It means some people make selfish choices. It's not a reflection on you." "It feels like it is," I said. "It feels like there's something about me that makes men want to betray me." "That's the pain talking," he said. "I know it doesn't feel that way right now, but this isn't about you. This is about his choices and her choices, not about you." After we hung up, I sat with that thought. I wanted to believe him, but the shame was sitting heavy in my chest, the feeling that somehow I should have known. I should have seen the signs. I should have been vigilant enough, suspicious enough, enough of something to have prevented this. Sarah came over the next afternoon with groceries. She cooked me chicken soup while I sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. "Mom, you need to eat," she said gently. "I'm not hungry," I replied. "I know, but your body still needs fuel." She set a bowl of soup in front of me, and I picked at it with a spoon, moving the noodles around without really eating. "I talked to David," Sarah said carefully. My head snapped up. "You what?" "He called me this morning. He wanted to apologize to me for ruining the party. He wanted to know if you were okay." "Did you tell him I was okay?" I asked sharply. "I told him the truth, that you're devastated, that your heart is broken, and that it's his fault." I felt a small flash of pride. "What did he say?" "He said he knew. He said he hated himself for what he'd done. He asked if you would talk to him." "No," I said immediately. "Absolutely not. I didn't think you would," Sarah said. I told him I'd pass along the message. "I hope that's okay." "It's fine," I said. But it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. Over the next few days, I became aware of the scope of the lies in a way that hadn't fully hit me in the immediate aftermath. I discovered that David had taken out a second credit card, something I didn't even know was possible without my knowledge. He had used it to book hotel rooms in the city. He had taken Rebecca to restaurants I had wanted to go to but never had. He had built an entire second relationship, parallel to the one we shared. Carefully compartmentalized so that I would never find out. I found receipts in the trash. I found messages between them on his old phone, which he'd left on the bedroom dresser. Messages that made my stomach turn. Messages where he told her he loved her. Messages where they made plans for their future together. I found out from a mutual friend that David had told people, carefully, casually, that our relationship was rocky, that he wasn't sure if I was the one, that he had some doubts about our future. He had spent months, apparently, laying the groundwork for a narrative where it would make sense for him to move on. The more I discovered, the more I realized how calculated it all was. This wasn't a crime of passion, some sudden attraction he couldn't resist. This was premeditated, methodical betrayal, and Rebecca had been part of every bit of it. On the 5th day after the party, I went to school. I had called in sick for a few days, but I couldn't avoid real life forever. I had students depending on me. I had a job to do. My colleagues were kind but awkward. They had been at the party. They had witnessed the confrontation. They didn't know quite how to treat me, whether to acknowledge what happened or pretend it never occurred. "I'm fine," I told everyone who asked. "Really, I appreciate your concern, but I'm okay." I wasn't okay. But saying it out loud felt like if I said it enough times, it might become true. During my lunch period, I sat in my classroom, eating a sandwich I had no appetite for, when one of my students, a quiet girl named Emma, knocked on my open door. "Hi, Miss Margaret," she said shyly. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry about what happened. My mom was at your party, and she told me what occurred. I'm sorry someone hurt you like that." I felt tears prick my eyes at this small kindness from a 16-year-old girl. "Thank you, Emma," I said. "That's very kind of you to say. My mom always says that heartbreak is just love with nowhere to go," Emma said. I thought maybe that might help. After she left, I sat with that thought. Heartbreak is just love with nowhere to go. It was a nice sentiment, and from the mouth of a teenager, it felt profound. But what do you do with that love now that it has nowhere to go? What do you do with all the hope and trust and vulnerability you gave to someone who didn't deserve it? That was the question I was struggling with. 2 weeks after the party, I received a handwritten letter in the mail. It was from Rebecca. I held the envelope in my hands for a long time before I opened it. The handwriting was familiar. I had seen it on birthday cards and thank you notes over the years. Seeing it now, on this envelope, felt like a violation. I almost threw it away without reading it. Part of me wanted to. But another part of me needed to know what she had to say. I needed to understand how she could justify what she had done. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened it. "Dear Maggie, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to even want to read this. But I need to try to explain, even though I know there is no explanation that will undo the harm I've caused. When David and I met at that charity gala, there was an immediate attraction. I know that sounds like a cliché. We just clicked. But it's true. He was charming and funny and seemed interested in me in a way that made me feel special. At first, I didn't know he was in a serious relationship. He didn't mention you for weeks. When he finally told me about you, I was shocked. I told him he needed to end things with you, that what we were doing was wrong. But he didn't. Instead, he said he would. He said he would break up with you and be honest about why. He said he owed you that much. But then weeks would go by and he wouldn't do it. He kept saying he was waiting for the right time, the right moment, and I let him. I knew it was wrong, but I was 29 years old and felt like I'd found someone who truly understood me. I was selfish, I was cruel. And you were the one who paid the price for my selfishness. I want you to know that I've thought about you every single day since it happened. I've thought about all the ways I betrayed your trust. I've thought about how much you loved me and how I threw that away. You don't have to respond to this letter. You don't have to acknowledge it, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. And I understand if you never want to speak to me again. Rebecca, I read the letter 3 times. Each time, I felt a different emotion. First anger that she was trying to justify her actions, then sadness that this was all we had left to say to each other, and finally, a kind of hollow resignation. She was sorry. David was sorry. What good did that do? I called my mother that evening. My mother, Patricia, is 81 years old. She's Rebecca's grandmother. She and I have always been close. Closer than I've been with most people in my life. She was the first person I told after the party incident. Have you talked to Rebecca? She asked me now. She sent me a letter, I said, apologizing, and, my mother asked, and nothing. What am I supposed to do with an apology? It doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't give me back the 5 years I spent with David thinking I had a future with him. No, my mother agreed. It doesn't. But your cousin made a terrible mistake, Maggie. A terrible, selfish, hurtful mistake. But she's still your cousin. I know, I said, but I don't know if I can forgive her. Not yet. You don't have to, my mother said. Not today, but someday you might want to. And when that day comes, I hope you'll give her the chance to make amends. After we hung up, I sat with that thought. My mother had a way of putting things in perspective that made me think more deeply about what I wanted my life to look like. Did I want to hold on to this anger forever? Did I want to let it poison my relationship with the rest of my family? But also, was I ready to forgive? Was forgiveness even the right response to such deliberate betrayal? I decided I needed to hear from David one more time, not to reconcile, but to get closure, to ask the questions that had been burning in my mind since the night of the party. I texted him, just once, to talk, somewhere public. He responded within minutes, whenever you want, wherever you want. I'll be there. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my house on a Saturday morning, neutral territory, a place where there were other people around, which felt important for reasons I couldn't quite articulate. When I walked in, David was already sitting at a table in the corner. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes. His hair, usually neat and carefully styled, looked unkempt. Part of me felt a small satisfaction at seeing him suffer. I hate admitting that, but it's true. I sat down across from him without ordering anything. Thank you for meeting me, he said quietly. I'm not here to reconcile, I said immediately. I need to be clear about that. I'm here because I have questions and I deserve answers. Okay, he said. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. When did you stop loving me? I asked. He flinched. I never stopped loving you. Don't lie to me, I said. Not anymore. If you ever had any respect for me, you won't lie to me now. He looked at me for a long moment, and then he said, I don't think I ever stopped loving you, but I think I stopped being in love with you. There's a difference. The words hit me like a punch. How long? I don't know exactly. Maybe a year before I met Rebecca. Maybe longer. I was starting to feel stuck, like we were just going through the motions. You were content, and there's nothing wrong with contentment. But I was starting to wonder if there was something else out there. Something more. So you cheated on me instead of just talking to me? I said. You could have told me how you were feeling. We could have worked through it or ended it like adults. I know. He said. I should have. I was a coward. I didn't want to hurt you, so instead of having one difficult conversation, I lied for 8 months and hurt you far worse. Yes, I said. You did. We sat in silence for a moment. Why Rebecca? I asked. Out of all the people in the world, why did it have to be my cousin? Why couldn't you have the decency to fall for a stranger? It wasn't about her being your cousin, David said. It was about her being young and excited about life and interested in me in a way that made me feel like I was someone worth being excited about. She made me feel relevant again. That sounds shallow, and it is shallow. I'm not proud of it. Do you love her? I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I thought I did, he said finally. But I've had a lot of time to think over the past 2 weeks, and I'm not sure anymore. I think I was in love with the idea of starting over, of being someone new. And Rebecca represented that. But the reality of it, now that everything's out in the open, is different. Are you still with her? I asked. No, I moved out. I'm staying with a friend. I don't know, I think we're over. To be honest, I think the only reason we even got together was because of the deception and the secrecy. Now that it's all in the open, there's nothing holding it together. I felt a small surge of schadenfreude, and then I felt ashamed of myself for feeling it. Did I really want David to be miserable? Did I really want his relationship with Rebecca to fail? I thought about it, and the answer was yes. I did. I wanted him to feel pain the way I was feeling pain. I wanted him to lose something precious the way I had. But I also knew that his misery wasn't going to make me feel better. It wasn't going to undo what happened. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said quietly. I don't know if I'm capable of that kind of forgiveness. I understand, David said. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know that what you did, what you both did, changed me. It damaged something in me. I'm not sure I'm ever going to be able to trust someone the way I trusted you. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to be vulnerable with someone again without wondering what they're hiding. I'm sorry, David said. I'm so sorry, Maggie. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I looked at him. This man I had loved, this man I had built a life with, this man who had betrayed me so completely, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a kind of acceptance. An acceptance that he was a flawed human being who had made selfish choices. That Rebecca was a flawed human being who had made selfish choices. That none of it was my fault, and that I didn't deserve any of it. I'm glad you're sorry, I said. But your being sorry doesn't change anything for me. I need to move forward with my life. And I can't do that if I'm still tethered to you, waiting for some kind of redemption or explanation that will make sense of this. What does moving forward look like? David asked. I don't know yet, I said. But it doesn't include you. I hope you understand that. He nodded. I stood up. I think we're done here. Maggie, wait, David said. Is there anything I can do? Anything to make this right? I thought about that for a moment. Yes, I said. You can take full responsibility for what you did. You can stop making excuses. You can understand that Rebecca and I had a relationship that meant something to me, and you destroyed it. And then you can live with that knowledge. You can let it inform the rest of your life. That's what you can do. Then I walked out of that coffee shop, and I didn't look back. The confrontation with David didn't bring me the closure I thought it would. If anything, it made things more complicated. Because now I knew that some part of him regretted what he'd done, and knowing that made it harder to hold on to my anger. Anger is easier than this complicated mix of hurt and sadness and disappointment. A week later, I received another letter. This one was from David. He had written me pages, detailed explanations of his emotional journey, his own insecurities that had led him to cheat, his struggles with aging and relevance. He was asking for understanding, even if I couldn't offer forgiveness. I read the letter once and then I put it in a drawer. I couldn't bear to read it again. I couldn't afford to soften my stance. My heart was already too fragile. But I also didn't throw it away. At the end of that week, my mother invited me to a family dinner. It was just going to be me, her, my brother, and his family. Small and intimate. Safe. Rebecca won't be there, my mother assured me when she extended the invitation. Okay, I said. Then I'll come. As I was leaving my mother's house that evening, after a nice dinner where no one mentioned David or Rebecca or the betrayal, my mother pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, she said. For what? I asked. I haven't done anything. For not letting this destroy you, she said. For still showing up. For still being willing to be part of this family, even though you've been hurt. That takes strength. I hugged her, and I let myself cry, just for a moment, on her shoulder. I don't feel strong, I told her. Strength isn't always about feeling strong, she said. Sometimes it's just about putting one foot in front of the other and refusing to let your worst moment define your whole life. 6 weeks after the party, I did something I hadn't done in years. I painted. Not just painted in the way I paint with my students at school, teaching them color theory and brushwork technique. I mean really painted. I set up my old easel in the spare bedroom, the one David used to use as an office. I pulled out canvases I'd been saving for years, tubes of acrylic paint that had dried out and needed to be replaced. Brushes that were stiff and needed conditioning. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to paint. I just knew I needed to do something with my hands, something that didn't involve thinking or remembering or analyzing. I started with a wash of blues and greens across the canvas. I thought about the ocean, about Italy, where David and I had gone 2 years ago. We'd walked along the Amalfi Coast, and it had been one of the most beautiful moments of my life. I had felt so alive, so loved, so certain of my future. As I painted, I realized I couldn't go back to that moment and reclaim it. That version of me, that version of my life, was gone. But I could paint it. I could capture something of what I had felt, and in doing so, acknowledge it without being destroyed by it. I painted for hours. I lost track of time. When I finally stepped back, the sun was setting outside the window, casting long shadows across the room. What I had created wasn't beautiful, not in a conventional sense. It was chaotic and emotional and raw. But it was true, it was honest, it was mine. The next evening, I did it again. This time, I painted something darker. I painted anger, violent reds and blacks, sharp brushstrokes, and aggressive lines. I didn't try to make it pretty. I just let it out. And the next evening, and the next. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt like I was doing something for myself. Something that had nothing to do with David or Rebecca or anyone else's perception of me. I was creating something that existed only for the purpose of my own healing. Sarah noticed the change in me almost immediately. "You're smiling again," she said one morning when I arrived at her office for lunch. She works about 15 minutes from my house, and we'd started having a standing lunch date once a week. "Am I?" I said. "Yeah, you are. It's nice to see." "I've been painting," I told her, "just for myself." I'd forgotten how much I missed it. "Mom, that's amazing," Sarah said. "I'm so glad you're taking care of yourself." "I'm trying," I said. "Some days are harder than others, but I'm trying." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you." I also started seeing a therapist. Her name is Dr. Jennifer Walsh, and she's a woman in her 50s who specializes in relationship trauma and betrayal. In our first session, I was honest with her. I told her about the betrayal, about David and Rebecca, about the magnitude of the lies. I told her about my struggle to trust my own judgment. "The thing that bothers me most," I said, "is that I feel stupid. I feel like I should have known. How did I miss all of this? How did I spend 5 years with someone and not see the truth?" "That's a very common reaction to betrayal," Dr. Walsh said. "People blame themselves because blame feels safer than the alternative, accepting that someone we loved deliberately hurt us. Blaming ourselves gives us the illusion of control. If it's our fault for not seeing it, then we can prevent it from happening again. But the truth is, we can't control what other people do. We can only control how we respond." "But shouldn't I have been more suspicious?" I asked. "Shouldn't I have questioned him more?" "Suspicious of what?" Dr. Walsh asked. "Do you have evidence that you were being willfully blind? Or is it just that someone you trusted betrayed that trust, and you're punishing yourself for not having omniscience?" The question hit me hard. I realized I was doing exactly what she said, punishing myself for not being able to read minds, for not having superpowers to see through David's lies. "I think I need to learn to trust myself again," I said. "I think you need to separate trusting your judgment from trusting other people," Dr. Walsh said. "You trusted David because there were reasonable grounds for that trust at the time. He was kind. He was attentive. He told you he loved you. Those were all reasonable reasons to trust him. The fact that he betrayed you wasn't because you were foolish. It was because he was dishonest. That's on him. That's not on you." Over the weeks of therapy, I started to understand the difference, and it made all the difference in how I thought about myself. About 3 months after the party, I received a text from Tom. "Coffee this Saturday. I have something I want to talk to you about." We met at our usual place, a small cafe downtown. Tom ordered as usual, black coffee, no sugar. I ordered tea. "I wanted to tell you something," Tom said once we were settled. "I got a job opportunity. It's in New York. It's a promotion, better pay, everything I've been working toward. But I wanted to talk to you before I made a decision." "Tom, that's wonderful," I said. "You should take it." "But what about you?" he asked. "You've been going through this rough time, and I don't want to abandon you." "You're not abandoning me," I said. "You're taking care of yourself. You're pursuing something good for your own life. And that's exactly what you should do." "Are you sure?" Tom asked. "I'm sure," I said. "You've been there for me through all of this. You caught David's deception. You held my hand when I was breaking apart. But I need you to know that I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be more than okay." Tom looked at me carefully. You mean that, don't you? I do, I said. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm still hurt. I'm still angry sometimes. But I'm also painting again. I'm working with a therapist who's helping me process all of this. I'm spending time with my family. I'm remembering who I am when I'm not someone's girlfriend. And it's good. It's really good. Tom smiled. I'm happy for you. Truly? And I'm happy for you? I said. Go to New York. Have adventures. Live your best life. But promise me you'll visit. Of course I will, Tom said. As the months passed, I started to rebuild my life in ways I hadn't anticipated. I joined an art group at the community center, a group of women in their 50s and 60s who met once a week to paint and share their work. I joined a book club. I took a weekend trip to visit my brother's family. I redecorated my bedroom, took down the photos of David and me, and filled the walls with my own artwork instead. One evening, while I was working on a particularly ambitious canvas, a series of faces, each expressing a different emotion, my daughter called. Mom, I need to tell you something, Sarah said, and my stomach immediately knotted. After everything that had happened, any serious tone in my child's voice sent me into a panic. Are you okay? I asked. I'm fine. More than fine, actually. I'm engaged. I felt my anxiety transform into joy.
Sarah, that's wonderful! Tell me everything.
She told me about Marcus, her boyfriend of 2 years. He'd proposed at a restaurant they both loved. It was perfect and private and exactly what Sarah would want. We want to have a small wedding, Sarah said. Just family and close friends. And I was wondering if maybe you would help me plan it. I know after everything with your birthday party, planning events might feel complicated. But I would really love to have you involved. I thought about this for a moment. A wedding. After the disaster of my birthday party, the idea of planning an event felt terrifying. But then I realized something. Sarah deserved to have her joy, and I deserved to be part of that joy. The party hadn't been ruined because of planning. It had been ruined because of betrayal. That wasn't my fault, and I couldn't let what David and Rebecca did dictate the rest of my life. I would be honored, I said. Let's plan the most beautiful wedding we can. 9 months after the party, I was back at the gallery where I had met David. It was the same gallery, the same artist opening I had dismissed as a routine night out that turned into the beginning of the biggest mistake of my life. But tonight I was here for a different reason. My art was on the walls. The gallery owner, a woman named Catherine, had seen some of my paintings at the community center art show and had approached me about exhibiting my work. At first, I'd said no. I didn't think I was ready. I didn't think my work was good enough. I didn't think I could handle the vulnerability of putting my work, especially work that was so deeply rooted in pain and betrayal, out into the world. But then I thought about what Dr. Walsh had said about control and trust, and I thought about how David and Rebecca had already taken so much from me. I wasn't going to let them take my art too. So I said yes, and now, here I was, standing in a gallery full of people, watching them look at my paintings. Some of them were about the betrayal, the angry reds and blacks, the chaotic composition. But others were about something different. They were about hope. They were about renewal. They were about the woman I was becoming after the devastation. Sarah stood beside me, beaming with pride. So did my mother? Tom had come back from New York for the opening. Even my ex-husband showed up with his current wife, and he congratulated me genuinely. But there was one person who wasn't there, and I had made sure of it. I had not invited David or Rebecca. This was my space. This was my triumph, and it belonged only to me. Catherine came over and squeezed my arm. You're a talented artist, Maggie. These paintings are extraordinary. I want to host a second exhibition for you next year. A bigger one? Really? I said. Really, in fact. Someone already asked about buying 3 of your pieces tonight. I can give you their information if you're interested in selling. I looked at my paintings on the wall, paintings that had come from the darkest place in my heart, and I realized that they had value, not because they were technically perfect, but because they were honest, because they came from a real place. Yes, I said. Yes, I want to sell them. I want other people to see them. I want other people to know that you can survive betrayal, that you can transform pain into something beautiful. Later that evening, after the opening had wound down and most of the guests had left, I stood alone in front of one particular painting. It was the one I'd worked on for weeks, the one I'd called Renewal. It showed a woman, based loosely on my own face, though I'd altered it enough that it wasn't quite me, standing in a field of flowers. She was looking upward, toward the light. Her face wasn't smiling exactly, but it was peaceful. It was open. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, devastated, betrayed, certain that my life was over. And I thought about the woman I was now, still hurt, still processing, but alive. Creating. Healing. A man approached me, one of the gallery attendees who had lingered. He was probably in his 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes. For a split second, I felt panic. I thought he might be a man who wanted to compliment me or ask me out, and the idea terrified me. But he simply said, "This painting saved my life." "What?" I asked, confused. "I know that sounds dramatic," he said, "but I went through something similar to what I sense this painting is about. A betrayal, a loss of trust in myself and in people, and looking at this, at the idea of renewal, it reminded me that there's light on the other side of darkness." I felt tears in my eyes. "Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for creating it," he said, and then he walked away. I stood there, looking at my painting, thinking about this stranger and what my work had meant to him, and I realized that something good had come from the worst time of my life. Not just for me, but potentially for others as well. That was a kind of redemption I hadn't expected to find. 1 year after the party, I was driving home from the grocery store when my phone rang through my car's Bluetooth system. It was my mother, Maggie. "I'm calling because Rebecca wants to see you," my mother said without preamble. "She's asked me multiple times to help facilitate a conversation between the two of you. I've been putting her off, but she's really been struggling. I think you should know that." I felt my stomach tighten. A year had passed. I had done the work. I had healed, or at least I had begun to heal. The idea of seeing Rebecca still triggered something in me, but it was different now. It wasn't the sharp, stabbing pain it used to be. It was more like an old wound that still ached when the weather changed. "What kind of struggling?" I asked. "She's depressed. She's isolated herself from the family. She's barely working. She feels like she's destroyed her relationship with you permanently, and she can't seem to move past it." I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car with the engine off, listening to my mother. "Mom, I don't know if I'm ready to see her," I said honestly. "I know," my mother said, "but I think you should consider it, not for her sake necessarily, but for yours. You've done remarkable work healing from this, Maggie. But I wonder if there's a piece of you that's still holding on to the anger, still waiting for something from her. I think seeing her, really talking to her, might help you let that go." After we hung up, I sat with what my mother had said. Was she right? Was I still holding on to something? I thought about it, and I realized the answer was yes. There was a part of me that wanted Rebecca to suffer the way I had suffered. There was a part of me that wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. And as long as that part of me existed, I wasn't truly free. I called Dr. Walsh and asked for an emergency session. "I think you need to forgive Rebecca," Dr. Walsh said. After I'd explained the situation, not because what she did was okay, not because she deserves it, but because holding on to this anger is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to get sick. "I've heard that saying before," I said. "It's a saying because it's true," Dr. Walsh replied. "Maggie, you've done incredible work this past year. You've transformed your pain into art. You've rebuilt your life, you've reclaimed your power. But as long as you're still angry at Rebecca, as long as you're still waiting for her to hurt the way you hurt, you're still giving her power over your life. So what do you suggest?" I asked. "I suggest you meet with her. Not because you owe her anything, but because you owe something to yourself. You owe yourself complete and total freedom from this." I texted my mother, "Tell Rebecca I'll meet with her, but not in a family setting. Just the two of us." 2 weeks later, Rebecca and I sat across from each other at a small coffee shop on the outskirts of town. It was neutral territory, not either of our homes, not a family gathering place. Just a quiet corner of a cafe where we could talk without being overheard. Rebecca looked different than I remembered. She'd lost weight. Her hair was longer and had grown out from what looked like a recently attempted dye job. There were dark circles under her eyes. She looked exhausted. "Thank you for meeting with me," Rebecca said quietly. "I'm not sure I did this for you," I said. I wanted to be honest. "I did this for myself," she nodded. "I understand." "I don't think you do," I said. "Let me be clear about something, Rebecca. You hurt me. You and David both hurt me in ways that I'm still processing. You betrayed my trust. You lied to me. You became complicit in his deception, and you were someone I loved. That's not something I can just forget or move past easily." Rebecca was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "I know," she whispered. "But," I continued, I'm also aware that you were 29 years old when this happened. You were vulnerable and seeking approval and connection. Those aren't excuses for what you did, but their context. I've spent a lot of time in therapy thinking about this, and I've come to understand that you weren't uniquely evil. You were a young woman who made selfish choices. Terrible, hurtful, selfish choices. But selfish choices nonetheless. Maggie, I'm so sorry, Rebecca said. I'm so sorry. I've been sorry every single day since it happened. I can't undo it. I can't change what I did. But I'm sorry. I looked at her, at this young woman who was once like a daughter to me, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but something like acceptance. Acceptance that she had done a terrible thing. Acceptance that she was suffering the consequences of that. Acceptance that I didn't need to make her suffer more to feel justice. Rebecca, I need you to understand something, I said. I'm not going to forget what happened. I'm not going to pretend it didn't occur. I'm not going to have the relationship with you that we used to have. That relationship is gone and I don't think it can ever be fully repaired. Rebecca nodded, more tears falling. But, I continued, I'm also not going to hate you forever. I'm going to let this go, not for you, but for me. Because I can't carry this anger anymore, it's too heavy and I deserve to be light. What does that mean? Rebecca asked quietly. What happens now? Honestly, I don't know, I said. We'll have to figure that out. But it doesn't mean we go back to being close. We need boundaries. Real, healthy boundaries. You betrayed my trust. And trust like that doesn't come back easily. I understand, Rebecca said. But it also doesn't mean we can never speak to each other, I said. We have a family. We share people we love. Over time, maybe we can find a way to coexist peacefully. Not as close friends, but as people who respect each other's space and their place in the family. Rebecca reached across the table, as if to touch my hand, but then she stopped herself. She seemed to recognize that we weren't there yet. How long do you think it will take? She asked. For things to feel normal? I don't know, I said. Probably a long time. Maybe they'll never feel the way they used to. But normal isn't the goal anymore. Healthy is the goal. Peaceful is the goal. We sat together for another hour, talking about practical things. Rebecca told me about therapy she'd started. She told me about the end of her relationship with David, which had dissolved less than 6 months after the betrayal was exposed. She told me about how isolated she'd felt, how she'd lost friends because of the scandal. I listened, and I felt compassion for her struggles. Not the kind of deep compassion I used to feel when she was still my beloved cousin, but a kind of human compassion, the compassion of one person for another person who is struggling. When we left the coffee shop, we didn't hug, we didn't make plans to meet again. But Rebecca said, "Thank you for giving me a chance," and I said, "Thank you for being honest with me today." And I meant it. David was a different story. I didn't seek him out. I had no desire to see him or speak to him. But about a month after my coffee with Rebecca, I ran into him at the grocery store. He was in the produce section, examining avocados. He looked up and saw me, and I watched his face go through a series of emotions: shock, guilt, longing. He approached me cautiously. "Hi, Maggie," he said. "David," I acknowledged. "How have you been?" he asked. "I've heard about your art show." "I'm glad you're doing well." The fact that he knew about my art show, presumably from the family network or mutual friends, made me realize that he was still trying to keep tabs on me, still invested in my life in ways that were no longer appropriate. "I've been good," I said coolly. "I've been moving forward." "That's wonderful," he said. "I'm happy for you." "Are you?" I asked. "Or are you just saying that?" He looked taken aback. "I am genuinely happy for you, Maggie. You deserve to be happy." "Yes, I do," I said. "And do you know what would make me happy, David? Never having to see you again." He flinched. "I understand. I don't think you do," I said. "I've done a lot of work over this past year. I've been in therapy. I've processed my anger. I've even made peace with Rebecca, to some degree. But with you, I don't think I'm ever going to get there, and I need you to be okay with that." "Why?" he asked. "Why Rebecca and not me?" "Because Rebecca was young and made a mistake," I said. "Because Rebecca is showing genuine remorse and working on herself. But you, David, you lied to me for 8 months while looking me in the eye. You built an entire secret relationship parallel to ours. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed my trust and my own judgment. And then you sat across from me at a coffee shop and said you weren't sure if you'd ever stopped loving me. That's not someone seeking redemption. That's someone trying to minimize what they did." David was quiet. "I hope you get help," I said. I hope you figure out why you felt the need to lie instead of just being honest about your feelings. I hope you do the work so that you don't do this to someone else. But I can't be part of that journey. I won't be. Maggie, I'm sorry, he said. I know you are, I said. But your being sorry doesn't change anything for me. Goodbye, David. And I walked away. I didn't look back. Later that night, I called Dr. Walsh. I saw David today, I told her. And I realized something. What's that? She asked. I realized that I don't actually need forgiveness from David in order to be free, I said. With Rebecca, I needed to forgive her, not for her sake, but because we have a family connection and because holding on to that anger was poisoning me. But with David, I don't need anything from him. I don't need his apology or his explanation or his remorse. I just need to move on. That's an important distinction, Dr. Walsh said. How does it feel? It feels good, I said. It feels like letting go of something I didn't realize I was still carrying. That's the work of forgiveness, Dr. Walsh said. It's not about forgiving the other person so much as it's about freeing yourself from the hold they have over you. After I hung up, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal felt distant now, like something that had happened to a different version of me. That woman, the woman who trusted David so completely, who believed in forever, who felt devastated by Rebecca's betrayal, she still existed somewhere inside me. But she wasn't running my life anymore. I was running my life, and I was doing a pretty good job of it. 18 months after the party, I stood in my classroom after school had ended, looking at a wall I'd just finished decorating. It was covered with paintings from my students, their final projects for the year. Abstract pieces, landscapes, portraits, still life arrangements. Each one was a window into how a young person saw the world. One painting in particular caught my eye. It was by a quiet girl named Maya, who'd been struggling all year. Her painting showed a woman standing in the rain, and at first glance, it seemed sad. But if you looked closer, you could see that the woman was smiling. The rain wasn't drowning her, it was baptizing her. I had asked the class to title their work. Maya had titled hers, Starting Again. I felt tears in my eyes, the kind of tears that come when you see your own journey reflected in someone else's art. After I locked up the classroom, I drove to the cafe where I was meeting Sarah for our weekly lunch date. My daughter was glowing these days. She was 6 months pregnant with her first child, my first grandchild. A granddaughter she and Marcus had learned at the ultrasound. "Hi, Mom," Sarah said, standing to hug me as I arrived. She had to lean back to accommodate her belly. "How are you feeling today?" I asked, helping her sit back down. "Tired," she said. "But good, really good. The baby's been kicking like crazy today. I think she's excited for life." We ordered our usual salad for her, a sandwich for me, tea for both of us. "So I need to talk to you about something," Sarah said, and I felt that old moment of panic before she laughed. "Nothing bad. Don't look so worried." "I can't help it," I said. "After everything that's happened, good news still makes me nervous." "That makes sense," Sarah said gently. "But I promise this is actually good. Marcus and I want to name the baby after you, Margaret. We're going to call her Maggie, like we call you. We want to honor you." I felt emotion rise in my chest, not just happiness, but something deeper. The idea that my name, my identity, would be passed down to the next generation, that this little girl would carry something of me forward into the future. "Sarah, that's..." I couldn't finish the sentence. I just let myself cry. Sarah reached across the table and held my hand. "You deserve to be honored, Mom," she said. "You've been so strong. You've survived something that could have broken you, and instead, you've become even more beautiful. I want my daughter to know a woman like that. I want her to have that example." That evening, I went home and opened my journal, something I'd been keeping since the early days of therapy. I liked to go back and read my old entries to see how far I'd come. The entries from right after the party were barely readable. My handwriting was shaky, the words coming so fast they tumbled over each other. I had written things like, "How do I survive this?" and "I will never trust anyone again," and "This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me." But as the months passed, the entries changed. They became more measured, more thoughtful. I started writing about the art I was creating. I wrote about moments of beauty, a sunset, a conversation with Tom, the joy of painting something that actually turned out the way I'd envisioned it. And then there were entries about the harder work. Processing with Dr. Walsh, setting boundaries, forgiving Rebecca, understanding that I didn't need to forgive David in order to be free. I flipped to a recent entry, written just a few weeks ago today. I realized that I'm not angry anymore. I'm not sad anymore. I'm not even bitter. What I feel instead is a kind of profound gratitude for the life I have now, not because the betrayal was good, but because it forced me to build something new. It forced me to go inward and remember who I am when I'm not defined by someone else's love. And who I am is pretty great. I sat with that realization. It was true, I was great, not perfect. I still had insecurities and bad days and moments of doubt. But I was strong, I was creative, I was kind, I was building something meaningful. 2 weeks later, I had an unexpected visitor at my house. It was my mother, which wasn't unusual. But she wasn't alone. She had brought Rebecca with her. My first instinct was to feel defensive. We had agreed, Rebecca and I, to take things slowly. We had said that family gatherings would be the venue where we might eventually see each other, not surprise visits at home. But my mother looked purposeful, and Rebecca looked nervous, and I recognized that this was something that needed to happen. "Come in," I said. We sat in my living room. My mother excused herself to the kitchen to make tea, giving Rebecca and me space. "I have something I want to show you," Rebecca said. She pulled out a thick envelope and handed it to me. "I hope this isn't crossing a line. If it is, I apologize. But I thought you should know." Inside the envelope were letters. Dozens of them. They were all addressed to me, all in Rebecca's handwriting, and they were dated. One from each day since the party. "I've been writing to you every single day for the past 18 months, Rebecca said. "I'm not asking you to read them. I'm not asking you to respond. I just wanted you to know that for every single day since I hurt you, I've sat down and written about it. About what I did. About how sorry I am. About how I've been trying to become a better person." I looked at the stack of letters, and I felt something crack open inside me. "Rebecca," I said, "you didn't have to do this." "I know I didn't have to," she said. "But I needed to. For myself. I needed to acknowledge every day that I caused you pain. I needed to not let myself off the hook." "Have you gotten help?" I asked. "Are you seeing someone?" "Yes," she said. "I've been in therapy for over a year. My therapist helped me understand that I wasn't doing this for you. I was doing it for me, to help me process my own guilt and my own patterns. And it's helped. A lot." We talked for almost an hour. Rebecca told me about her life now, a new job that she loved, friendships she'd rebuilt, a renewed commitment to her own growth and self-awareness. "I don't expect us to go back to how we were," Rebecca said at the end. "But I hope that someday, we might be able to have a relationship again. Not the old one, but a new one. Built on honesty and respect." "Maybe," I said. "I think I'm open to that. Not yet, I'm still not ready for that. But maybe someday?" "That's enough," Rebecca said. "That's more than enough." When my mother came back with the tea, we all sat together. And for the first time since the party, the three of us were in the same room without it feeling like a bomb was about to explode. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. 6 months later, I held my granddaughter for the first time. Little Maggie was tiny and perfect, with her mother's dark hair and what I could already tell would be her father's kind eyes. Sarah had asked me to be in the delivery room, and I had been there to witness the moment this new life came into the world. I had cut the umbilical cord. I had cried happy tears. I had felt the full weight of maternal love, not just for my daughter, but for this perfect new human being who was entering the world. Now, as I rocked her gently, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. If David hadn't betrayed me, if Rebecca hadn't made those choices, my life would have followed a different path. I would have been focused on that relationship, waiting for a future with him. Maybe I would have missed opportunities. Maybe I would have put my own dreams on hold, the way I had done so many times in my life for the men I loved. Instead, I had been forced to turn inward, and in turning inward, I had discovered parts of myself I didn't know existed. Little Maggie opened her eyes and looked at me. For a moment, it felt like she was seeing me, really seeing me. Not as a grandmother, not as a victim of betrayal, not as anyone's romantic partner. Just as myself. "Hi, sweetheart," I whispered. "Welcome to the world. Your mom says you're going to grow up to be strong and kind and creative. I hope she's right. But no matter what, I'm going to be here to love you every step of the way." That evening, after Sarah and Marcus had gone to bed, and little Maggie was sleeping in her bassinet, I sat in the quiet living room of their home and thought about the invitation I had received earlier that week. A gallery in Boston had seen my work and wanted to host a retrospective exhibition, a bigger show featuring my paintings from over the past 18 months. They wanted to call it Breaking and Blooming: One Woman's Journey Through Betrayal. I had said yes. I had also decided to do something I never thought I would do. I would write about this experience. Not a tell-all, sensationalized account meant to embarrass David and Rebecca, but a real, honest reflection on what it means to have your trust shattered and how to rebuild yourself after that happens. I wanted young women, women my age, anyone who had experienced betrayal, to know that it doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be a chapter. A painful, difficult, transformative chapter. But not the end. 1 year later, I stood in the Boston Gallery surrounded by my work. The retrospective had been hung beautifully, the pieces arranged in chronological order, so you could literally see the evolution from anger to acceptance to peace to creation. There were journalists there, and local news stations, and people who had come because they had heard about the story. Some of them had experienced their own betrayals, and said that seeing my paintings had helped them understand that they weren't alone. But the people who meant the most to me were standing together in one corner of the gallery: my family. Sarah with little Maggie on her hip. My mother, my brother and his family. Tom, who had come back from New York for the opening. Even Marcus, who had become like a second son to me. And there, standing slightly apart from the group, but still very much present, was Rebecca. She had asked if she could come, and after consulting with my therapist, I had said yes. This was part of my story now, the part about learning to forgive, about building new relationships from the ashes of old ones. She looked at my paintings with tears in her eyes, and I could see that she understood the journey they represented. She had been part of my lowest moment, and now she was here witnessing my triumph. That felt important somehow. That the person who had helped break me got to see me put myself back together. Dr. Walsh stood near the paintings for a long time, just looking at them. When she finally came to talk to me, she said, "You know what I see when I look at these?" "What?" I asked. "I see a woman who took her power back," she said. "I see someone who turned pain into purpose. I see healing." That night I went home to my small house, the one I had reclaimed and repainted and filled with light. I went into my studio, the spare bedroom that had once been David's office, and I looked at the new canvases I had started. This new series was different. It wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about joy. It was about the ordinary moments that make up a life. A cup of tea, a conversation with a friend. The feeling of paint under your fingernails, the sound of a baby laughing. I picked up a brush and dipped it in paint and began to create. And as I painted, I thought about everything I had learned. About the difference between trusting people and trusting myself. About how pain can transform into art. About how betrayal, while devastating, doesn't have to be defining. I thought about the woman I used to be. The woman who was so grateful to have a second chance at love, that she didn't question whether that love was real. The woman who put so much of her identity into being someone's girlfriend that she lost sight of who she was on her own. And I felt grateful for her. For the naivety that had allowed her to love so completely. For the broken heart that had cracked her open and allowed something new to grow inside. Because that broken heart had led me here. To this moment. To this life where I was my own person. Where I was creating art that meant something. Where I was a grandmother. Where I was free. 3 years after the party, I ran into David at a bookstore. We both reached for the same book at the same time, a memoir about rebuilding after loss. He smiled sadly. Funny that we'd both be interested in this. "Is it?" I asked. "I think it makes sense." "How have you been?" he asked. "I've been good," I said. "Really good, actually." "I heard about your exhibition," he said. "And your book. I haven't read it, but I heard about it. I'm glad you found a way to make something meaningful out of what happened." "I did," I said. "Not because of you, but in spite of you. In spite of everything that happened." He nodded, and I could see the acceptance in his face. He wasn't the villain of my story anymore. He was just a man who had made poor choices, and the consequences of those choices had reverberated through both our lives. "I hope you find peace," I said. And I meant it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired of the story. Tired of living in the past. "I hope you find it too," he said. "Though it sounds like you already have." I smiled. He was right. I had found peace. Not the absence of struggle or pain, but the presence of purpose. The knowledge that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. In the years that followed, my life continued to evolve. Sarah had another baby. A son, who she named after my father, his grandfather. Little Maggie grew into a bright, creative child who loved to paint with her grandmother. Rebecca and I built a new relationship. One that was different from before but genuine in its own way. We started a small art initiative together to help women process trauma through creative expression. Tom married a woman he met in New York, and they visited often. My mother lived to be 91, and I was with her at the end, holding her hand as she drifted peacefully away. My art continued to evolve, and I eventually opened a small gallery of my own, dedicated to featuring artists who had created meaningful work from pain. But the moment that mattered most, the moment that symbolized everything I had become, came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was teaching my art class, the same class I'd been teaching for decades. We were working on a lesson about perspective, how the same scene could look completely different depending on where you stood. A student raised his hand. "Emma's Margaret, how do you know what perspective is right? How do you know which viewpoint to trust?" I thought about that question carefully. I thought about David, about Rebecca, about betrayal and forgiveness and the long journey to healing. "That's a really good question," I said. "And the truth is, there isn't always one right perspective. There are multiple ways of seeing the same thing. But what matters is that you're honest about where you're standing. You're honest about your own limitations and biases. And most importantly, you trust yourself to know what's true for you." The student nodded, seeming to understand. After class, as I was erasing the whiteboard, I looked at the wall where Maya's painting had hung all these years, the one titled, "Starting Again." It had become so faded and worn that you could barely make out the image anymore. But that was okay, because I didn't need to see it anymore to remember what it meant. The lesson had become part of me. We all get the chance to start again. We all get to choose what we do with our pain. We all get to become something new. And I had chosen to become a woman who paints, who loves, who creates, who heals, who teaches, who laughs, who lives fully and courageously in the knowledge that betrayal is not the end of the story. It's just the beginning of a new one.